Hey, Stroke Lines, and I'm continuing on in my list of programs that I had. This one is an example that I'm not actually going to be able to run because I wrote this like it looked like about 7 years ago when I worked at TI, and so I can't run it. But I did want to talk through what I did in it because it's a really good example of things that you might consider doing. You know, any one of these things I think are something that in this script that you might pull out of and adapt. So. Let's just start. And again, remember, like this is before I was programming at all. So it's I'm looking at the code and it's embarrassing. But hey, you know what? We all start somewhere, right? So I'm not embarrassed over where I was that long ago. I've come a long way. Anyway, so to start here, it looks like I was looking at to detect what language was being used because I gave this to my colleagues all around the world, and I could detect what language was running on the computer. And then that way I could do some logic based on what was detected. It would tell it to go sub to different sections. So I was using go subs, which is crazy. I haven't written a go sub in years. So it would go do different parts of my script based on the language of their computer or this username, which apparently someone was in China. And I don't know why I didn't use, I had this for Go for China. So I don't remember why I did that, but yeah. This helped me understand where AutoHotkey was installed, so I could then point to stuff beneath it. This is a script I had that would go read the SharePoint website. So we were on a SharePoint site. Sorry, not the website, but the actual page. So we were on a calendar for an email campaign, and it would have targeting information, who's going to be the recipient, information about the name of the campaign, the subject line, all that information. But more importantly, because that was my job as the targeting. Here I just customized the URL. I'm sorry, the icon in the system tray, and then we jump down to grab calendar, and so that's where let's go ahead and you can see right here it was 2 function calls. So why I had a go sub to do 2 function calls, whatever. But this would get I think that just connected to IE, and then this would go rip that page and store it in a bunch of variables. Like in that page, it would actually do certain stuff. And but it would get certain things and store them in variables I'm going to use later in this file. So that was here, and then create folders. So the create folders was basically I would want to, for a given campaign, create folders on whoever's computer, mine or if the other people running it, that would have the name of the it would start off with the name of the so here's the description name, but I would, because of course it had a legal character names in a file name or a folder name, I replaced those. So here was a regex where I would replace these characters with an underscore, and then just because I didn't do it all in one step, this replaced it. If there was multiple underscores, it would replace it with just one, and that way I didn't have a bunch of them, a bunch of underscores in there. And so that would be the description name. So I was cleaning that up. Here looks like, wow, that's weird. I was replacing spaces. Probably 2 double spaces with a single space. Again, I would do it very differently. It's always fun to look back at your old code, right? Here, this was, I think, just for troubleshooting of understanding what I'm doing, where some folders are. Again, I had a different logic for, which person doing what and where it would go. Boy, I haven't used box in a really long time, but that's where it would do some stuff. Need to save the path. So here we're getting, so this is where I get the UCID was our unique calendar ID. That was the unique ID on the calendar, and actually was part of the URL. So it helped us, it would allow us to navigate back to that entry because that was that unique number. And if we just put that into, concatenated it with the URL of our site, we could pull up that page again. So it was great having that number. So here I hard coded this, but then put in, so this is putting in that into there. This was our business unit. And then the description name. So this was creating the name of the folder, so it was easy. And hey, it checked to see if it was already there. If it, said if it is, are you sure you want to overwrite this? And it would allow you to say yes or no. And then it would go apparently like create the folder. Looks like, again, I think I was trying to save it locally as an HTML file, and I don't recall if I kept that. But at one point I know it worked. I just don't, I think I stopped doing it. It was nice to have a snapshot because people change stuff. So I'm not too sure what all this is. File name, no. So that's no, I don't know why there's an E here, but no file name, no extension. So I was getting a name for the file, and then so that was that part. Let's let's grab this, and then we don't have to keep coming back. So that was the create folder, creating parameters. All right, so here we are in creating parameters. You know what I'll do is I'll remind myself, I'll put that right near the edge so I can see what we're on. All right, so this is going to be, so I had the date, this date start, that was the in the page, that was the date saying when they wanted to start, but I needed to parse it out. And again, I would tackle this very differently, but I created the month, year, and day, and that allowed me to then have that in here. So this is actually getting the syntax where I'm going to write it for my SQL request. So this was helping me write my SQL that I would then run on my query. That was the beautiful thing about this, right? Was this actually pre-built my SQL for the query to put in the right date range. I even, hopefully it's in this one, I even had targeting to based on which business unit they picked and which product ID and subcategory, it would dynamically write my SQL for me. And this was before it was always a manual thing. And it was very, very time consuming. And I got it down to where it was, well, it built the template in a couple seconds. And then you go in and, of course, do some advanced stuff, advanced targeting, which we could never do before because we didn't have the time. So here we're adjusting the last transaction date. So here's where I'm putting in the date. And this way, I think I was going back 1 year, basically. Again, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. Oh, I was still grabbing the month. I don't know why I had to do that there. And then I would add in exclusions. So I would look and see if they had certain flags on that web page. This would write this exclusion. But I think I ended up hard coding it because we never wanted to have some of these ones in there. And so that one doesn't look like it's actually right here, at least dynamic. It's just dumping it in there. It does. I actually, so maybe exclude if that, yeah, if it keeps appending it. And then, oh, here we go. So yeah, so then I started looking at the product subfamily targeting, and this is where we had the names of the things in there, and this would go through and rip them out for me and parse it and then shove them into my query, basically. So again, I'm not going to get into the specifics of this code and how it worked. It's just the overall idea. Right. So again, I'm ripping it from a web page, and I had to map out exactly everything. But once I did that, I could then, it was done once, right? It took me a while to do that. But once I got this code working, then I didn't have to do that every time, right? It was just a great time saver. So that was all the parameters. Okay. And then we're into the write main. So now I take all that stuff I kind of pre-built and I shove it into one SQL file. I think that's what I'm doing here is I start writing the campaign, and then here is the generals. So these are the different pieces for it of how I'm going to be writing my SQL, where it's coming from, the IDs and stuff I'm getting, and here's the SQL for it with the different regions depending on which ones were selected. And here I'm writing. So here I delete if the file happens to be there already, and then it'll sleep a little bit, and then write the SQL file for me, and then file append. Why am I doing a TSV? I don't remember what this one, create shell for first TSV file. Oh, I know what that was. I basically pre-built a file after the queries run. When I export it, it pre-built a blank file there with the correct file name. And so when I would run my SQL and I would say export, I could just click on it and it would then give me the right name, and I would just overwrite it. That way I didn't have to freehand type it, and it allowed me to make sure that the file name was in the structure, because we had a very, very specific structure for that file name. And so it allowed me to not have to freehand type it and make mistakes. So I think that's what I did there. Write criteria. Remove abandoning and trailing spaces. So I think I'm just kind of cleaning up stuff here. Yeah, it looks like I'm just going through and cleaning up. And here's the overall criteria. And this, again, some of these, it is based off of, oh, this was a cheat sheet for myself of what you need to do in the campaign to remind myself of what I need to do. And right criteria, this is still all part of that. And then this was the different countries. So depending on which person it was, that was where it would jump to, which I should have logically gone in the order, but the very first thing up here was to well, it's not even here, it's in the very top of the script where it showed the computer names. You know, we use the language. That was where I was jumping to, hey, if it's in the United States, these are the countries by default. And by the way, if they included Europe, all I'd have to do is come in here and go like this, and then I could add Europe. Of course, that'd be in my SQL file, not here. But it made it really easy to toggle on and off depending on if we wanted to do targeting or not in those areas. And this is the rest of Asia, and I think this is the Asia Pacific region. So it allowed us to do that kind of stuff. And yeah, so that, oh, this is where, what was that? I think that was the trying to save it as that MHT file, which again, I think I ended up turning off after a while. The recency, this would allow me to just say, basically get the date of going back a year from today. So yeah, so hopefully that you find, again, obviously not this code, but you get the idea, right? I automated ripping a web page, taking information from that, and then building my SQL query customized based on what the parameters were there. And it went from taking hours to build one query to seconds. So I hope that helps. Cheers.